WCW champion, match.
Lighten up, Francis.
We're gonna play football. Yippee!
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode of The Review. It's the OSG Sports College Football Podcast, and we are the online sports guys. This week, it's a kind of 2.5 or threesome.
I was going to say, wait a minute. If you're going to call it a threesome out of the blocks, I was going to have a problem.
You got me, OSG Phil. You got him, OSG Nelson. And we got the voice of Jay Wilkerson 16, Brother Wilkie, if you will.
Yes, I am here. Yes, we're having some video difficulties, so you get to hear me rather than see me.
I can't wait to see the full screen for voice of for this entire show.
It is.
We're looking at it right now.
It is the voice of God. Guys, we had a pretty big week this week. It's looking more and more like we might have some college football action here in the very near future, as quite a few of the conferences and campuses have said, we're going to let people start coming back. Your thoughts? Too early, too soon, right way to approach it, wrong way to approach it? Let me hear what you got to say.
Wilkie hit it.
I knew you were going to say that. Part of me says this makes Mike Gundy look like a genius, because about a month and a half ago he said this was going to happen, and sure enough, it looks to be it's going to happen. But the thing is, do I think it's too soon? My feeling is no. I think it's time. People are chomping at the bit to get back to their normal lives. That includes college kids. I just think it's time. You've got to, the college kids right now are, well, I haven't looked at the latest stats on the COVID-19, but I just don't see where it's really affecting the college kids as far as death rates and those kind of things. But again, I preface that by saying I haven't looked at the latest numbers. But it's time, and we've got, to me, you got to get the American psyche back in the right track. Just too many negative things have happened in the last 2 months, and we need something positive to happen. And college football is that one thing that puts everybody together. Everybody roots for their alma mater. And I think we really need that right now. And I think the powers that be are recognizing this and seeing the good signs of the last month or so as things have progressed as far as kicking COVID-19's behind, that it's time to bring them back. It's time to bring them back. Nice effect there, Mr. Nelson.
That's what we're here for.
Except you couldn't see there for a second either.
Yeah, the man was struggling a little bit.
It is no joking matter in a while. It's good to see that the schools are beginning to allow some voluntary folks to trickle onto campus, but there's a lot of precautions being taken place as well. One of the most prepared schools that I've seen so far is the University of Georgia. Okay. Head athletic trainer Ron Corson has a pretty detailed plan of testing and reviews and keeping up with his athletes. John, do you think that's what needs to be done right now to allow guys back in and start easing their way back into conditioning and things like that, but still be careful to make sure that nothing kind of crops back up, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Corson has done, and Ron, I believe, was consulted for the Georgia High School Association plan. And so you have the GHSA coming back with their athletes.
John, she's breaking up. She's breaking up.
Well, no, maybe if I took the mask off, maybe that would help. But But Corson was around for the culmination of the GHSA plan, which is June 8. And this involves conditioning for all athletes in sports that the schools want to have up and running. And it's basically lift, run, go home. There's no contact. There's no 7-on-7. There's none of that. But so for the GHSA to consult with Corson, it makes a lot of sense. The plan, the enhanced safety measures, health and safety measures. You have enhanced education of all team members, health and wellness practices, including not limited to preventing the spread of COVID-19. 3-stage screening process involves screening before student athletes arrive on campus within 72 hours of entering facilities and on a daily basis upon resumption of athletics activities. Testing of symptomatic team members, and then immediate isolation of team members who are under investigation, a transition period that allows student athletes to gradually adapt to full training and sport activity, and so on. So you look at the Big Ten, I think that they split it from June 1 to June 15. They're thinking June 8. Big 12 is looking for mid-June as well. Pac-12 is supposed to make a determination this week. ACC is supposed to do something this week. Louisville's already had a plan. But in all of that, this is great. The one concern I have is there's no mention of testing anyone, it's blanket testing, because the numbers I believe that have been put out, 35% of the cases are from folks that were asymptomatic to begin with. There's no mention in any plan about testing people who are asymptomatic. I hope that that's going to be added into this process as we go forward. And cross promotion. Jason Longshore and I from Soccer Down Here, we were doing a little math and we were trying to figure out the SEC. And to test consistently between, say, July 1st and the end of football season, this was past the SEC championship game, it would take, if you're testing every individual for multiple days during every single week that you're participating, you're looking at something in the neighborhood of $35 million for the SEC alone to test everyone consistently, asymptomatic or otherwise, just to get you through football season. And so for me, it's always going to be testing. But the one thing that concerns me is that there's no mention of anyone asymptomatic being tested as a part of this process.
If that's going to be a mandate as far as the college seasons, and of course we focus here on football, that is going to put a major financial squeeze on the group of 5 schools who really don't have the budget to be able to test, much less the asymptomatic athletes that you mentioned, John, but much less test the regular athletes that are out there on their football team. It's just not cost effective unless some benefactor comes in and writes a check for that. Now we're seeing the haves and have-nots as far as the testing. The other thing is, I think we all saw Gene Smith's comment, the athletic director at the Ohio State, talking about if he follows the guidelines for social distancing in Ohio, you're going to see about 22,000 at the Horseshoe.
Yep.
And that is just, well, I mean, that is just not going to be financially feasible even for Ohio State. And I understand, that might have to be the case, but that's going to be in September. So we don't know between, as we head to June and September, where we're going to be as far as testing and how this disease has progressed on. And as things continue to get, the news continues to get better. But, if you got what does Ohio Stadium seat? About 103, 104,000? 102?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's a quarter of capacity? 25-ish?
Yeah, I saw the same article that Wilkie's referencing, and Gene was referencing somewhere in the 20 to 30,000 range, with a hopeful on max attendance if they're able to get to that point. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the same thing. He believes that there's going to be fans at games, but in the same respect, he also mentioned similar type of numbers that if they do allow fans back in, we're not talking about 100,000 people in a crowded stadium because it's not feasible at this point for this season.
I'm just imagining, because Alabama and Georgia play this year,
Oh, yeah.
and it's an early season game as well. And if the social distancing guidelines are in place there, how much you think that ticket's going to be?
Oh, yeah. Well, and that runs into a whole other can of worms, and something that nobody's really been able to address or question or answer at this point. And that's, okay,
The secondary
argument.
ticket
Yeah,
market.
for the sake of argument, how do you determine who are those people who are going to be able to get into the stadium?
Money talks.
Because you got a whole separate battle when it comes to that, because most universities, even the group of 5 schools, have a pretty decent base of season ticket holders. And if you're a season ticket holder who's contributing money in order to purchase season tickets, you're going to want to have your butt sitting in a seat.
Well, you've got about 50 to 55, 60,000 season ticket holders that at the University of Georgia, probably more than that. And, they also got to contribute to the booster club and whatever level they're on.
Right.
So obviously, whatever the highest level, it'll go from the highest level and trickle down until they hit that number. And then what about the Alabama fans?
Yeah.
Let's see. What's the normal allotment? 10%?
Yep.
So if you're 9,000 divided by 4, you're looking at about 2,200 folks, and you're going to have about 6,500 folks who are going to be hot.
But at this point, there's not really a way around it, because I just don't see, even as things have progressed, the testing has increased, things are starting to flatten a little bit. It just doesn't look like there's a universe where they're going to be able to put 100,000 people shoulder to shoulder anytime in the foreseeable future. But the flip side of that
Guys, I would not be shocked if it happens. I'm telling you right now, I would not be shocked if we start seeing full stadiums by mid-October. That's just a gut feeling I have. And I don't think the SEC is going to do whatever they can
Oh, no doubt.
to keep that game, because that's a game that people have anticipated since they played because they played in some classic SEC and college football championship games, particularly all of them at Mercedes-Benz. But look, they don't want this to have the look and feel of an XFL game or an AF game. They want this to be the college football jewel. And I just think by that time, we're talking about 3-4 months now, it might be a scenario where they're able to let everybody in, and we're going to start seeing full stadiums again. That's just a gut feeling.
I think at this point, particularly for your Power 5 schools, they're going to get paid. If they play the games, they're getting their TV money, and it'll offset the cost of not having a full house. I just don't see that we're in a position to be able to make that kind of a judgment at this point. I'm not a medical person. I don't have that science background. I'm not an epidemiologist. But every one of the people that I've read who are experts in their field, not politicians, have said this is going to kick back up again in the fall. You've got to have plans for all those scenarios, and putting 100,000 people in a stadium knowing that the risk of another outbreak is pretty damn good. That's a huge liability risk. Huge. And if I'm a college football president, do I really want to take on that responsibility? It's one thing to let a closed group of students, athletes, staff, a controlled group like that be together to go play a football game and maybe let a few people into the stadium. But it's another thing entirely to have 100,000 plus other people around at the same time.
And some of the surveys I've seen as far as college football fans saying I would say it's a majority are willing to take that risk to watch a big game like that in person. So you've got that aspect as well. But we're talking 3-4 months down the road, and I'm not a medical guy. I can't tell you the effects, whether it's going to come raging back again. But I do know we have a lot more knowledge about the COVID-19 than we've had when it first started, and it's, again, I think we're doing a great job of controlling the disease, but I think college football fans, if they want to be there, are going to be there. And, as we've got, will the restrictions relax? I don't know. But I just think if you're a college football fan, you want to go to the game.
That's kind of been the problem with all this. We're at a point now where there's a lot of people just saying, the heck with the risk. I'm going out in public and I'm going in a large group. And you may not be putting yourself at risk, but you're putting a whole lot of other people that you may not even realize at risk by doing that. And that's where the issue comes into play. Do you want to be that athletic director or that school president or that conference president who said, the heck with what all the scientific experts say? Our fans are chomping at the bit to come into the stadium. We're letting them in the stadium. Do you want that liability? Because that's ripe for a lawsuit.
And I think that that's the gap here that we're looking at. You're looking at the possibility of games August, September, October, and we're discussing it as a present tense issue here in late May. I think on this particular show, we're giving a lot more forethought and depth of field to all of the issues than some leagues overseas that want to get their action going on. And I think that this is an important discussion to have, because if you don't have these discussions now, then by the time that you've opened the doors to your student athletes, by the time that everybody gets back on campus, you've decided whether or not you want to have your sophomores, your incoming freshmen, your sophomores, juniors, and your seniors learning virtually or learning on campus. I think that to have these discussions now are just as equally important, because instead of doing something in mid-August and then just turning it into the running of the bulls in Pamplona, I think it's just as important that we're having the discussion now, so folks can sit there and parse through the information as best they can and understand where things could go. This is not a one-way street. This is a multiple-lane highway. And the fact that you have cars in every single lane doing a bunch of different things, you got a defensive drive for everybody.
That's a good way to put it.
I say if you're 65 or older, might want to think about not going to the game if that's the attitude. 65 and younger, go. Chances are, even if you contract the virus, you're not going to die from it. Or you're not going to get. I'm telling you.
I've seen plenty of people. As in my job, my paying job as a news person, I've seen quite a few people who have come pretty darn close to dying from it. You can't really make that broad brush of a statement, because those 25 or 30-year-olds have 70 or 80-year-old grandparents or parents that they may be interacting with down the line. And that's the issue. But going back to what John said, you've got to put all this out on the table now. Because if you're talking about this as what do we do now in late August when we're getting ready for the season to kick off, you've already lost.
You're screwed.
You've got to be talking about all these hypotheticals. What if this happens and it goes this way or this way or this way or this way? Because if you don't, it's going to be absolute freaking chaos.
Yeah, see what Britain's doing right now with Project Restart in the Premier League, where they're trying to ram it down their players' throats. It's not going very well, because it's like the plan is changing. And they're like, oh, crap, we've got to get guys back out there to play so we can finish our season and do all these different things. They should have been having these discussions 2 months ago. Yeah. There's a reason that Germany is having their professional soccer leagues playing now. They've been in consult with the government ever since the whole thing started. That's why they've got 2 weeks of competition under their belt, and the rest of the major leagues in Europe aren't doing a thing. The fact that college football is having these discussions now is what's important.
It is. And the fact that they're able to get the kids at least started with their off-season training and workout and get to have some interaction with them on a personal basis is a good start. we're coming pretty close to that 6 to 8 week window that most of the coaches and athletic training staffs have agreed is that window where we need to get things going in order to have guys ready to play come the end of August. And I think that's got to be the primary focus at this point. Once you get the guys to the point where they're ready to play and start hitting each other and playing football without the risk of getting injured, then we can figure out what to do about the fans. But I think we got to take this one step at a time.
Yeah. What else is on your mind as you're driving the bus today there, Phil?
I mean, that's really the biggest issue. We've also, just to be a contrarian, or for, I guess, for any other way you want to put it, Michigan might be the outlier in all of this. Michigan school president Mark Schlissel, who just happens to be an immunologist, has said he's not so sure that his school will be starting on time as planned, or however you want to call it,
Right.
because he said he's not going to let his football team take part in a 2020 season unless there's students on campus full time.
So what has Harbaugh said about this?
Harbaugh hasn't said much.
Okay.
But ultimately his boss has to say so when it comes to that. He says if there's no on-campus instruction, then there won't be intercollegiate athletics, at least for Michigan. There is currently some degree of doubt as to whether there'll be college athletics anywhere, at least in the fall. He may be overreacting a little bit to that at this point in time, the way things are developing, but he may not be. We don't really know. Wilkie, what are your thoughts? We talked a little bit about this over the last couple of weeks, I think, while you were busy making the parquet floor.
The parquet driveway, baby.
What are your thoughts about the idea of conferences or teams starting at different times and not having a complete launch at the end of August?
Well, it might be the reality because of state guidelines and other factors involved. But I this is where you need to have a commissioner type for college football that can navigate these waters rather than having the five commissioners with different agendas and different focuses. But I think the Big Ten is going to do everything, what I've read, everything they can humanly possible to start on time. And I think you said it right at the beginning that Michigan tends to be an outliner now. And when you have a blue blood program like that, that's threatening not to play football, or even fall athletics, but football being such a huge part of the Michigan culture there, and such a huge part of the Big Ten, I think that's going to be very difficult for Michigan not to play football. Obviously the money aspect is there, but what will happen to Michigan athletics if they can't play a season because of whatever's going on in state, or whatever is going on with the Board of Regents, or I guess they have a Board of Regents at the University of Michigan. Most state universities at large do. I mean, that's tough. That'd be a death nail to me, to Michigan athletics, that doesn't happen. This is what's frustrating me, is we're hearing all these people outside of athletics or whatever, political types, that are just spouting off their opinion on things like this, that Michigan can't play football. And, I just wish cooler heads would prevail in this. I mean,
Well, then let me ask you guys this before we go to break here. How would you handle a football schedule? And these things have been made years upon years upon years in advance. You know who your conference is. You know who your money games are. You know who your FCS opponents are. You know who homecoming is. If you're a school, and you could be Go 5, Power 5, Michigan, whatever. If you cannot fulfill your schedule for whatever reason, how would you, as a conference commissioner or as the NCAA policeman du jour, handle this? Does this mean that this school goes 0-12 and has a series of 1-0 forfeits? Does this mean that you're looking at things differently? Is our conference, our conference bowl lineups null and void at this point? How would you guys, and Phil, let me start with you. How would you guys handle it if a team in a conference decides that they can't do it? And we've heard about the Mountain West with a couple of schools in the state of California a couple of weeks ago that were impacted, the University of California system being impacted. We don't know if that's going to change, anticipating that it will. But if we get to the point in August that you have guys not playing other than the financial hit, how would you register this? How would you lay this out?
I think you're going to see the bowl games, for one, this year at least, go away or go on hiatus. But that's a big dilemma, and it goes back to what Wilkie said, which I agree a zillion % with. You need a singular voice for college football, much like you have the NCAA, for the most part, being a singular voice in basketball. They aren't in football. They don't really control bowl games or the playoffs. That being said, there's going to be some adjustments, and there probably will be some payouts if some schools play and some don't that are involved, because some of the smaller group of 5 schools or the 1AA school, or the FCS schools,
they ain't paying us. You had it right.
That have cupcake games scheduled that are paycheck games. Something's going to have to compensate that. It may end up being that they just agree to play at a later date, or postpone the game until a later date, or postpone a date in the future because of it. But something's going to have to be done in order to rectify that. There's not a really good answer to that, and I suspect that's one of the 8 million things that right now the athletic directors and people in charge of the purse strings in college football programs, big and small, are in the middle of trying to figure out how they can do this.
All right, Wilkie, you're the top guy.
Well,
how would you do it?
Okay, well, I think for the D3, D2s, the FCSs, I think they're between a rock and a hard place. There's just not that many options for them other than just the 0-12 1-0 scenario. For the group of 5, well, let me address the Power 5 here. I'm going to use that Michigan example that we just talked about. It wouldn't shock me if Michigan played their home games down in Florida. I think it'd be that serious. They would play down probably Orlando or whatever venue's open for them.
Play at IMG because of the relationship that's there.
Yeah, whatever. Because there is an alumni base down there, and probably a pretty significant one. And I can see the Power 5 schools that are in that kind of situation doing that, finding an alternative venue, almost like a professional team relocating. You brought up the California scenario with the state universities basically saying we're not going to have fall classes, and really putting the Mountain West in a pickle. And California determining, well, are they going to be able to play sports? Are they going to be able to this fall? Are they going to be able to have fans? Whatever. Look what happens with the Rams and the Chargers and the 49ers. If they relocate for a year, you don't think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the politicians that be in California to maybe reverse course and take a deep look at the numbers to see that this can happen? I think that's, but again, as I said at the top, you've got 5 different conferences, and I guess when we had the Go Fives, 10 group of conferences with different agendas and different styles, I guess. And the SEC's on the forefront right now, saying we're starting up. We're going to play, and we're starting up, and I think the other ones the dominoes are going to fall. The Big 12 is in a very similar position. The ACC is the one that I think is going to have some difficulty because of the Northeastern schools and the tight guidelines that those states up in the Northeast have imposed during the coronavirus outbreak. The Southern schools are pretty much okay. They're the ones that are going to have probably the toughest time. The Big Ten may have a similar scenario with everything that's going on in the state of Michigan, but again, will we see programs relocate for a year to get those home games in the Power Five? That to me would be interesting.
It's a very interesting scenario. And speaking of scenarios, after we come back from the break, guys, I want to talk about some rumors of a couple of Group of Five conferences possibly merging and realigning in order to help facilitate playing a college football season. That and a baby Newton finding a new home. All that and more when we return for the second block of the review. You are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
I must break you.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You've made it to the second block. This is the review for those of you new to us. We are the OSG Sports College Football Podcast. It would be derelict in my duty if I didn't do the marketing part here, where you can catch us on social media. Real easy to find pretty much everywhere. Just look up at OSG Sports on your favorite social media site. You'll find us. We are there. If you're watching, you could be watching us on our YouTube channel. You could be watching on Zingo.tv. Is that correct?
Zingo TV and the Zingo TV app, channel 250 with our friends of the Barn Burner Network and their channel, where they have a bunch of stuff. This show airs in its first element Wednesday afternoons from 3 to 4, and whenever else they want to put it in the lineup. So first airing after we get to do the airings on our platforms goes on Zingo TV. You can download the Zingo TV app, available on iOS and Android. Channel 250, the Barn Burner Network, Wednesday afternoons at 3 o'clock.
And for those of you watching, if you haven't figured it out, this is actually just a podcast that we record on video.
Except for me, that has video problems.
You have the amazing full screen photograph.
And I hope the engineers are working hard on this.
Yeah, really.
And of course, OSG Nelson there loving to flash his phone because it's what he does. But I guess that's a whole other conversation. Guys, we're going to pick back up a little bit where we left off here in the first block. And want to talk about a proposal that's been floating out there for a little while and is starting to gain a little traction as some of the smaller Group of Five schools look to save some money in their athletic budgets this year, and that's conference realignment. And by that, I specifically am talking about a proposal that Conference USA and the Sun Belt, two of the larger Group of Five conferences with schools all up and down the country, from the Midwest to the Southwest, Northeast, and Southeast, They're talking about combining their efforts this year and putting everybody into geographical conferences to kind of limit travel costs. Mixed for some interesting potential alignments and potential matchups here. Guys, is this a good idea? Is this the wave of the future? Is this something that has some legs that could go past this season?
I'm in. I like the idea. I mean, right now you're looking at a limited amount of revenue coming in for the 2019 season. And you're also trying to look at things another couple of years down the line. So you're looking at, from the Conference USA standpoint, 14 schools: Louisiana Tech, UAB, Southern Miss, Texas San Antonio, North Texas, which is in Denton, north of the Metroplex, Rice, UTEP, Florida Atlantic, Western Kentucky, Marshall, Charlotte, FIU, Middle Tennessee, and Old Dominion. So your outliers from the Conference USA perspective are Old Dominion to the northeast, and you have Texas San Antonio, UTEP would be your biggest outlier when it comes to the western frontier. And then when you look at the Sun Belt Conference for football, you're looking at what? You're looking at App State, Georgia Southern. You're looking at UAB, and you're looking at, as I'm trying to dredge up the schedule and the member schools as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah, Louisiana.
Yeah. So you're looking at a lot of schools that could benefit from this geographically. App State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Troy, Coastal, the University of Louisiana, the new name, Ark State, Louisiana Monroe, Texas State, and South Alabama. So I think that it could benefit both if you had the football version of the ACC Big Ten Challenge and a Big East Challenge or whatever, and did something like this, just because it would be easier to hop on a bus. You're cutting down on game day travel. You're cutting down on hotel rooms. You're cutting down on budgets. Anything that can get you from point A to point B to where you can still have games Wilkie. I think that this is a solid idea. I just would love to see how they think it's going to come out.
And one proposal I'm looking at right now would merge the two leagues into a pair of 7-team divisions, with the East compiling of Appalachian State, Marshall, Middle Tennessee, Old Dominion, Western Kentucky, Charlotte, Coastal Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Georgia State, and Georgia Southern, and adding Liberty to that mix and having them join the league. The 14-team West side would be Louisiana, Louisiana Monroe, La Tech, South Alabama, Southern Miss, Troy, UAB, Arkansas State, New Mexico State, North Texas, Rice, Texas State, San Antonio, and UTEP. So that's one proposal I'm looking at right now in case of the merger. And I think, look, the American is the Mac Daddy of the group of five. And we all have an agreement that they should be the sixth team in the Power Five.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, would kind of challenge the American, because I think you're getting strength in numbers, and you got some really solid football programs in both leagues that would challenge, to me, the American. I don't know what you would call this new merger of the CUSA and the Sun Belt. Me personally, I'd keep the Sun Belt name. That's pretty solid.
Belt.
What's that?
Conference Sun Belt.
Conference Sun Belt. Yes, Conference Sun Belt USA.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I think you got it covered. And then I guess, what do you have? A semifinal and a final to determine who wins each half, to figure out what your bowl setup would be. So you'd add basically what would amount to 2 games at the tail end of your schedule to figure out who goes where for your bowls. I like the idea.
I love the idea too. And to me, it may add a little fuel to the fire to have the group of 5 start their own playoff. Think about it. I mean, you've got what,
28, isn't it?
28, yeah, solid football programs there. And the American, let's face it, that's a group. That's not a group of 5. That's a Power 5 league with Houston and God, I'm drawing a blank on the other teams in there. Temple, UCF, and USF. I mean, you've got solid football programs there. You know, obviously, you would have probably the Sun Belt Conference Sun Belt USA and the the champion of the American probably meeting most of the time. I think it would up the stakes for the Mountain West to improve their profile in the MAC, which, you know, to me, those are underrated football leagues as well. But I think in the long term, it would help the group of five.
You're looking at probably, 52 schools that would have their own Go Five-ish playoff entity to build itself to play Team 6 of the Power 5 to figure out who really could be that 6 team in the Power 5.
Yeah, it opens up a whole slew of possibilities here.
Dig it.
As an alumni of a Sunbelt school, I like it a lot. I like the idea of geographic rivalries. Of course, we've got some that are already in our conference, see Appalachian State. But to be able to play some of the Florida schools, to be able to play up the coast a little bit, I think is a great opportunity. I think for the Texas and Louisiana schools, it helps them financially. The travel's a lot easier. The travel's rough on anybody, kids or adults in professional sports, when you have to travel to a game. And there's a lot of schools now that are even talking about, to save money, having their team travel to a game site the day of the game.
Yeah,
which is absurd.
I don't know if it's an easy trip from Huntington, West Virginia to Las Cruces, New Mexico. That might be a little bit of a bear, but I think you make a good solid point.
Yeah, from Huntington, West Virginia, just about anywhere. Outside of maybe Cincinnati is a big trip.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other conversation.
Pack a lunch and a dinner to get to Las Cruces.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been advocating this for a long time. And I see the merit in it. I see the potential financial gain in it for those conferences to differentiate themselves from the Power 5, because quite honestly, as good as they are and as good as the Cincinnatis and some of the other teams in the AAC are, it's hard for them to financially keep up with the Ohio States and the Georgias and the Alabamas and LSUs of the world financially. It's really hard. And this may be that cutoff point where we have that global shift again, and the haves play in their division against each other, and the have lesses play in theirs, and so on down the line. This might be the way of the future. I love it. Bravo to both the Sun Belt and the Conference USA folks for coming up with this idea. I hope they adopt it.
And of course, there are 2 non-football playing members in the Sun Belt, Texas Arlington and UA Little Rock. But they would be absorbed in that as well, as far as other sports. But no, I agree with you too. And I think there will be either a cable television network or streaming service that would pay, not premium dollars, but some serious dollars to have that playoff. I mean, they're already streaming on ESPN Plus.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could have...
Which pays nothing.
No, but what you could do is, with the relationship that some of the conferences have with CBS Sports Network, is this an opportunity for them to jump into the fray and perhaps have this Go 5 top of the ladder to determine who goes to that next stage? Do they want to take that kind of a jump? It's programming for them if they want to do it. That the Plus will want to jump on because of their relationships with these other conferences. So it does present itself with pretty good programming opportunities, and it gives you something from the ground up when it comes to college football. And those opportunities are becoming rarer and rarer. So I would say this turns into something along the lines of ESPN events like they do with more than half of the bowls, or it gives someone like CBS Sports Network an opportunity to have that property that doesn't make them necessarily the outlier as much as they already are.
I could see this. I could see a CBS Amazon partnership with something like this, with Amazon having the exclusive streaming rights of the Go Fives, and you would get some solid games with Houston and Cincinnati, or Georgia State, Georgia Southern. I mean, there's some solid matchups that people will watch.
I agree. I mean, it's not going to be for everybody. It may not be it may not change the eyeball viewing habits in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but it's not designed to. It's designed for everybody else who doesn't have a $30 million coaching staff budget or recruiting budget, because none of the Go 5 schools at this level have that. So I'm all for it. I hope they do it. We'll see where it goes. We still got a little bit of time, but don't be surprised to see that announcement coming here in the near future. Before we wrap things up, guys, I want to talk about a couple of minor things, or I guess they're not minor to the people involved, but probably one of the bigger headlines of the week. Cam Newton's baby brother leaving Howard to come back home and play at his brother's alma mater, Auburn. John, you're a resident Auburn expert. About it.
By default. Kalen Newton was a quarterback in the Atlanta area in high school and went to Howard University for his first round of scholarship. He really was the only bright spot that Howard had offensively and pretty much dragged them to one of the largest point spread victory turnarounds ever in the history of the world. If you remember the Howard UNLV game,
yep,
that's probably what Kalen Newton is known for more than anything else. A, about how bad Howard was offensively and defensively in FCS. B, how bad UNLV was, period. And C, for the comeback that Howard got to get the Duke against UNLV. Kalen proved himself at the FCS level, and now he ends up going to the Plains. Obviously, there's no way I think that he can live up to his older brother and what Cam did on the Plains, but it's an interesting pickup, and you have an athletic quarterback. I don't know how his skill set translates to the SEC, but what it does do is it gives you a change of pace from Bo Nix, someone who's a little more fleet of foot, and you can construct some packages for Kalen and have him come in and really give defenses in the SEC something to think about. Interesting pickup because of the pedigree. I just want to see how it's implemented.
Wilkie, you like it?
Sure. I don't know much about this, but I'll agree with John.
There you go. Attaboy. Nicely done.
Couple other quick things here. Kind of a funny little note out of Alabama as head coach Nick Saban.
Oh, no.
Sporting his Roll Tide safety mask.
Oh, yeah.
Scolds the Alabama mascot for not wearing his.
Yeah, the PSA. Saw that.
But hey, much like Coach O going on TV in Louisiana and telling the folks down there to protect themselves and stay safe. Good message. If Coach is doing it.
Hey, Al, didn't I tell you that we have to maintain social distancing and that you have to wear a mask? So, honestly, if this is what gets folks to listen, if it's listening to Coach O and listening to Nick Saban and listening to Kirby Smart, I'm all for it. Good for the SEC schools for taking this kind of initiative. But, yeah, it was love the thought, but it was a bit of a painful watch.
A great business opportunity, too, to
no doubt
make those logoed masks.
Mm-hmm.
And here's one for you, Wilkie, and this will be the last thing we hit on today before we wrap things up. Some good news for Arkansas State football coach Blake Anderson as he gets his contract extended through 2023. Anderson's done a fantastic job at Arkansas State, 47-30 over, 6 years now? And he's gotten to the Red Wolves to bowl games almost every year. Super move. I love it for Arkansas State. It keeps them moving forward. And
they needed the consistent head coach because
yes,
it was one-hit wonders from Hugh Freeze to Gus Malzahn and so forth. And they've been able to keep Blake Anderson there for a while. And while we're on the subject of my home state, and I know we're a college football show, but I want to acknowledge the passing of Eddie Sutton, head coach at Arkansas. I don't think people realize outside the state I think there were people there that disputed James Naismith that invented the game, but Eddie Sutton did in 1974. He was that impactful with basketball in my home state of Arkansas. And his first 3 stars were home state guys, Sidney Moncrief, Marvin Delph, and Ron Brewer. So it's sad to see the passing of Eddie Sutton. He meant so much to basketball at Arkansas, and as well as moving on to Kentucky and to Oklahoma State, where he brought his alma mater, OSU, back to prominence. But a great coach, great man. I was lucky enough to get to know him, and hate to see him go.
One of the legends of the sport in the coaching business as a whole, not just college basketball.
No doubt.
And he's a trailblazer in what he did. He changed a lot of things in terms of fast breaking off full court presses, fast break offenses.
Well, you played defense when you played for Coach Sutton. His players were in your kitchen the whole time, and his specialty was denying the pass, denying the catch. That was his specialty, and plus he was known throughout the Southwest Conference as a ref intimidator. If you watch some of those old games, you can see that scowl. He would stare down some officials.
That is accurate. And also, Phil, before we go on my end, GoFundMe's now exist at Bowling Green State to try to bring back the baseball program. And there's also been a GoFundMe and a grassroots campaign to try to bring back hockey and men's and women's tennis, as Alabama Huntsville has cut their Division I hockey program, the only Division I hockey program south of the Mason-Dixon line. So if that is something that floats your boat and keeping programs online, look up UAH and look up Bowling Green State as they try to resurrect their programs.
And I think one is starting up as well. GoFundMe is starting up as well at Furman for their baseball program, which was cut this week.
Wow. Tough times, lots of change, and really lots of unknown as we kind of move forward here and start inching towards the busy season again. We've got a little time off to catch our breath and to do
time off. Who are you talking about? Time off. There's always news.
Well, for the college football folks, there's some time to kind of sit back and still be able to plan and plot all these different scenarios and see how things are going to happen, and be prepared for just about anything. Because just when you think everything is right and moving in one direction, it takes a quick left turn. Guys, what do you say we wrap up the show? It's been a lot. Some deep subjects here to talk about. Going to be interesting to see how things progress as we go here and we inch ever so close to the magic month of August, where the college football game gets going again in full force.
Yep.
So for OSG Nelson and for the Frozen J. Wilkerson 16, I am OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys, and you have been listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.